Another episode of At the Cross. I'm gonna put that over there. I'm gonna knock it over if it's over there. We have 4 episodes left, um, which is really weird to think about. Um, I've been doing this for 4 years. 4 years in May, actually, I think. Um, so it's kind of a nice tie-in. Started in COVID with my dad. You might remember that if you were here during the olden days, as it were. But because we have a month left, and we just finished up our talk on the last words of Jesus on the cross, I thought that we could do a little study. We're going to go through a book of the Bible. We're going to break it down for you. So we're going to do the first 2 chapters today. And yeah. So we're going to Job. I figure we are in a time of transition. I am in a time of transition. I don't take change very well. I really don't like change at all. I like my routines. I like the way I set things up. And once I'm used to something, I don't want to change it. So transitional periods are difficult for me. And I don't know what you guys have going on. If you started watching At the Cross your freshman year of high school, you're facing senior year of high school now. You're starting, well, hopefully not starting. You're starting to pack to move to college. Hopefully you're not starting to look at colleges. Or you're planning trade school or jobs or whatever it is that you're planning on doing. I know that the summer is usually a time of change. And this summer, of course, I am going to be packing to move out of my parents' house, 500 miles away in the other direction this time. More on that later. I've already killed enough time, I suppose. So why don't we open up our good old Bibles to Job. And we're going to start in the very first chapter and kind of work our way through. So we're going to read the first 19 verses of the first chapter. And it says, "There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, 'It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts.' Thus Job did continually. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, 'From where have you come?' Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it.' The Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil?' And Satan answered the Lord and said, 'Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand.' So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And there came a messenger to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them, and took them, and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another, and said, the fire of God fell from heaven, and burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another, and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 groups, and made a raid on the camels, and took them, and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another, and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and behold, a great wind came across the wilderness, and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. So, that's Job's life. That's Job's. Talk about change. So let's just recap that really quick, because that was a lot of information I just threw at you. Job was great. Job feared God. He was mad rich. But he was good. You know, he had a ton of servants that were well taken care of, I assume. 10 kids, good for him. He was constantly repenting on behalf of his kids, which is usually a good thing. You don't know what your kids are up to. He was protected by God. Satan says that God, put a hedge around Job and his house and everything that he has as protection. And Job probably didn't consciously realize that. I mean, I'm sure that there were struggles. I'm sure that the kids weren't perfect. I mean, if kids were perfect growing up, Job wouldn't be sacrificing animals for them daily as repentance on their behalf. Just crazy thought I had. So he probably didn't even realize how much God was protecting him until God told Satan, go, do your worst. And Satan did his worst. Satan really did. He took everything. And one of the things in these 19 verses that we can take away, I mean, there's obviously a lot that we can take away from it. Like, God is constantly protecting us, even if we don't fully realize the extent to which we are being protected. But another thing that we can take away is that bad things happen to good people. A lot of times, a bad thing will happen and people will say, well, did you see the sin they committed the other day? That's probably why. But they had it coming. That's not how this works. Job was blameless and upright. For what would God punish him? God was testing. God was showing off to Satan, and God was testing Job. And we'll learn more about the theodicy of the book of Job later, and we'll also explain what theodicy is later. But Job was a good person. Job was a good person, and everything was taken away from him. So the next couple verses explain how Job reacted. So this is 20 through 22, so the rest of the chapter. Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell on the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. I've seen people who have lost one child who immediately curse God and say that God would never have allowed that. If God was really good, he would never. Job lost 10. He lost his entire household and all of he lost everything. And he didn't sin. And he didn't curse God. He simply tore his robes, said, "The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And that is a very, very difficult thing to say in less bad circumstances. It's a difficult thing to say for me. The first thing that comes to my mind, and I don't know why it just popped into my mind exactly, but I have a very strong fear of tornadoes, and maybe then it's the great wind that came from the wilderness and toppled the house. It's giving tornado to me, anyways. And we had a tornado on campus. It didn't come near campus, but there was a tornado nearby last year, I want to say. This would have been a difficult thing for me to say while I was in the basement waiting for the tornado to pass. For Job, the tornado had passed, and it had taken 10 of his kids away from him. And he still said, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." Very, very difficult. This man, incredible. But that's not the end. So we now have the rebuttal. I'll skip kind of the first few verses of chapter 2, where Satan goes back to God and is like, "So that didn't work. But if you let me curse Job himself, then he'll curse you." And God is like, "Wrong. You can try, just don't kill him. Keep his life intact and curse him. I don't. You try it, buddy." So Satan went down, and this is beginning at verse 7. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took a piece of broken pottery with which to scrape himself while he sat in the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. So a couple things are going on here. Job is sick. I mean, he's like, does not sound the most comfortable to be covered in that many sores. It makes sense why he would take a piece of pottery to scrape off the sores. Probably didn't work super well, but he tried. And then his wife comes and is like, "Hey, buddy, did you miss the part where we lost 10 of our kids? Did you miss that? Or you're chilling? No? Okay. And then also all of our livestock is dead. All of our servants are dead except for like 3 of them. And also you're horrifically ill. Did we miss any of that? Like you're not, like you're just chilling. You're just chilling. Not cursing God. Like I can imagine that she would be angry. 10 of her kids have died. All of her servants, all of her livestock, her entire house has been wiped out. And her husband says, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." Huh? I would be fuming. I would be angry. And I would be wrong. I would be wrong for yelling at Job and saying, "Dude, do you not care?" But imagine it from her perspective. That's tough. And Job just says, "Listen, God has given us good in life. God has given us bad in life. And it's not like he wasn't upset. He was obviously very upset because remember, being upset, mourning people, it's not a sin. We've done episodes on that. Little plug there. But he still didn't sin. He simply says, hey, you kind of sound crazy, which pro tip, most women don't take that super well. If they are upset and you say, you speak as one of the foolish women would speak, it's on site. I'm sorry. It is fully on site there. We're already over time. But Job didn't sin. He wasn't wrong either. She was kind of speaking as one of the foolish women would speak. But here's the last part. This is the rest of the second chapter. Now, when Job's 3 friends heard all of this evil that had come upon them, they each came from his own place: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. And they raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads towards heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. And obviously, it continues from there. There's 40 more chapters. We will not be reading all of them. But that part, I think, is very interesting. A lot of times when we go to comfort our friends, when our friends are really going through it, we go and we want to fix it. We want to go and we want to say, okay, here are all of the things you have to do. Here's what you have to say to God in prayer. Here's what you have to do here. Here's what you have to think. They don't need that. They really don't. I mean, think of the last time you were super upset. Did you want someone coming in and telling you how to mourn and how to behave and how to think and how to feel? No. You wanted someone to come and just be. So if you have a friend who's really struggling, go and just sit with them. The silence isn't awkward unless you make it awkward. Just be with them. They sat in silence 7 days and 7 nights. Sometimes that's all you really need. We will continue next week with the next few chapters. I do suggest reading through everything, because especially from here out, we are going to be skipping around a bit to try and cover as much of the book as we can. Because of course, if we did 2 chapters per week, we would be here for 22 days. We don't have that kind of time on our hands, which is weird to think. But anyways, so the first 2 chapters of Job. Main point: hold fast to God in the hardest of times. Remain faithful, and you'll see what happens.